Right, so today I want to make a video about this whole Quebec, Alberta independence thing, and specifically the leader of the bloc, who is a hypocrite and an idiot in more than one way. And basically, he was asked recently about helping or the Western independence, and his quote here from Power and Politics was, "If they were attempting to create a green state in Western Canada, I might be tempted to help them. If they're trying to create an oil state, they cannot expect any help from us." And there's so many aspects of this that is just backwards and completely wrong and doublethink and every unethical and immoral way of putting things. It's not even possible. First of all, the most obvious one. Alberta gives, I believe, about $12 billion a year, and it's a staggering amount of money specifically to Quebec, and the money that Alberta, where Alberta gets that money is from oil revenue. So the fact that he's too proud to, when it means absolutely nothing, he'll take the moral stand. And this is something about the left that just absolutely gets to me. And the fact that people ignore this and pretend that it isn't the case is something that bothers me so much. Is that when taking a moral stand means absolutely nothing, and it doesn't take any, there's no potential downside to them, at least from their fans, they'll do it in a heartbeat. But whenever taking a moral stand actually could mean, bumping heads with the public, or maybe you're it's a PR or not a disaster, but it's something that could create potential problems, like someone taking a moral stand where the majority of the public, even though let's say you're right about it, which let's just say a moral stand that you're right about, you're right about beyond a shadow of a doubt, but the majority of the public will disagree with you and there'll be uproar. That's when the left all of a sudden they avoid it like the plague. And this is that area that Alberta gives them all this money from oil revenue, and yet they claim to be so, like, they're big environmentalists and all this stuff. And the other aspect of this too is that Quebec buys oil from the Saudis. I believe Canada brings in. A lot of it goes to Quebec. About a 500,000 barrels of oil a day, and they buy from the Saudis. And this is the other just totally backwards thinking. It literally in more than one way. Number one, buying oil from the Saudis. Well, again, all these people on the left, they claim to be feminists and anti-racist and all this kind of stuff, and yet you're buying oil from a country that literally, of all the countries in the world, I don't think women have less rights than most of these Middle Eastern countries. But if Don Cherry, for example, he was accused of being a sexist because he didn't think women should be in the locker room when a lot of the men in there are naked. Like, that's literally why people think Don Cherry's a sexist, and they'll take their moral stand, and when his reasoning for it is he doesn't want women being around men who are naked that don't even know each other. Like, how in the world is that not opening up the world, or opening things up towards problems? I don't know. And how you cannot just not agree with Cherry on that, I don't get it. But I think it's more of just a confirmation bias thing, at least on their part. But so again, the Saudis, terrible on women's rights, terrible on human rights in general. They still run their country like it's 1,000 years ago, like with their courts and stuff. So they're terrible and all that kind of stuff. And out in Alberta, and in the U.S. too, but in Alberta, we our methods of extracting oil are pretty much the cleanest you can possibly get. The Saudis have, like, literally no environmental regulations. Like, it's just the fact that so many people are willing to look the other way just so they can get their ill-gotten goods. And this is something that people need to understand too, is that people on the left, people on the right to a much lesser degree, but people on the left are literally willing to look the other way on any amount of corruption to get their way. And this is something that people need to understand, that it doesn't matter how much their points of view contradict each other, all this kind of stuff, they're willing to look the other way. And this whole like this guy is such a oh my it's so cringy. It's not even funny that the we've Alberta's literally given. I mean, Quebec literally balances their budget from Alberta money. Like, if it wasn't for Alberta, they'd be running like 10-12 billion dollars a year in deficits in a deficit. And Alberta has a big deficit, and no one's giving us any money. We're Alberta is one of the worst off provinces in the country, I believe, and we don't get any equalization payments. We're losing about $20 billion a year from equalization, and yet we have massive deficits, mass unemployment, all this kind of stuff. So that's the other thing too, is that the left claims to care about the little guy. They claim to care so much about the downtrodden, all this kind of stuff. But in reality, they only care about you if they support you. You know, the left, they don't do. I mean, they're big on helping the poor and all this kind of stuff. But their systems are always set up to perpetually keep people poor, to perpetually keep people to need those systems, because when they're on those systems, then the left is how they get elected is they run on keeping those systems and are usually increasing the benefits from whatever welfare unions and all this kind of stuff. Basically increasing people's sexual market value basically is the big thing, because if you got more money in your pocket, well then your sexual market value goes up. And that's basically the end of that. Like, basically the whole point of this video is that I don't get how people like I can like even though I disagree with you on with people about the whole that are big on environmentalism and anti-oil and all this kind of stuff, even if you agree with all of that stuff 100%, like I disagree with you, but let's just say you agree with it, there's absolutely no reason you still shouldn't be buying oil from Alberta. Absolutely none. Like, absolutely none. Alberta oil is cleaner. You're helping fellow Canadians, which you claim to care so much about, which you actually don't. You're just saying that to feel good about yourself and to virtue signal, but let's just say that you do. Again, it makes such little sense. And the fact that people on the left are either not smart enough to recognize these contradictions, which I could explain this kind of stuff to, 4th, 5th, 6th grade kids. We're talking, 9, 10-year-old kids, and have it make perfect sense in their mind. So you're either dumber than the average 4th or 5th grader, or, like I say, you're willing to literally look the other way and push the average Albertan down to get your ill-gotten goods, because, again, Quebec balances their budget basically from Alberta. And even though the whole system is supposed to be set up to help the people at the bottom, when all of a sudden the people that disagree with the left are at the bottom, well then all of a sudden the rules change. So this is something that it bothers me so much that we have. I mean, Alberta is really struggling. Canada as a whole is really struggling, so it's kind of masking just how bad Alberta's doing. And most of this is it's all, I mean, almost all, not exclusively from, because I know people will correct me on that, but it's almost all from leftist policies and this leftist hypocrisy and virtue signaling and BS from this bloc leader he's a big environmentalist, and he wants green energy, but he's buying oil from the Saudis. He's big on women's rights and human rights and gay rights, but he buys oil from a country that women have very little to no rights. Literally, like, again, the left, they'll talk about like the 1940s, 50s housewives and how bad they were treated, when in reality they weren't really. I mean, they didn't work, but their standard of living was higher than now. That's one thing that they never point out. But nevertheless, they buy oil from the Saudis. That gay rights is non-existent. If Andrew Scheer personally is against gay marriage but wouldn't legislate it, then that he's terrible. Like, he's this horrible homophobe. But we're gonna buy oil from and enrich people that literally want to kill. Like, imagine if Andrew Scheer said that. Imagine if Andrew Scheer's policy on not only gay marriage, obviously he'd be against it, but gays, is that, yeah, we're gonna kill him. We're gonna not just put him in jail. We're gonna kill him. Like, that's what they do a lot of times in the Middle East. If you're lucky, you'll be thrown in jail. So I don't want to talk too much on this issue. I've been rambling for quite a bit, but I think that this is something that people need to wake up to. And like I said, even if you're a big environmentalist, we still need oil. Like green energy is not nearly as good as what the green nuts would have you think. Germany has the most green energy out of any country in the world, and they're losing money from it because the technology for green energy. And don't give me this crap about how, well, there's not enough money put into it. There's literally been tens of billions of dollars put into green energy over the last handful of years, and yet it's still brutal. And for the simple reason is that, um, like I said, Germany has the most green wind and solar of any country in the world, and they lose money from it because if it's not windy or sunny, well, then you're not getting any energy. And the problem is you can only store a very small amount. So on days when it's really sunny or on days when it's really windy, you can't store it. So they have to put it back on the grid, and putting it back on the grid means you lose money from it because for green energy to be worth it, it needs to be basically constantly working, and it never is. Especially in a country like Canada too. Like in Alberta, I mean, down south it is windy quite a bit, but up north it's not very windy on average, and it's not very sunny. Like Alberta would, even if we put in a ton of green energy, we would lose so much money. It's not even funny. And like I said, the whole we don't put enough. There's not enough research money put into it. There's not enough investment put into it. That's complete BS. If you put tens of billions of dollars of investment into any other industry that's viable, it would have taken off by now. So the whole green energy, it's a scam, at least right now. Battery technology has to get way better. Like I mean, literally tens of times better for before it'll be worth it. You lose money on solar panels unless you're in an extremely sunny climate. You're going to lose money guaranteed on solar panels. I know people who have installed them, and they've done calculations and said, yeah, people are guaranteed they're going to lose money. So, and again, it'd be nice if we were all rich and we could afford to just throw away money on that kind of stuff. But thanks to leftist policies, well, we don't have. We're all broke, and that's the other thing too about the left too, is that they claim their policies are so great, but on the other hand, how they campaign to get elected on increasing welfare, increasing benefits, increasing free healthcare, all this kind of stuff, and no one stops to think. I mean, I stop to think, but no one stops to think to say, well, hey, if your policies are so good, people would need free healthcare and all this welfare, job benefits crap. That if it was so good, you could just afford to pay for it out of your own pocket. So which one is it? Are your policies good, in which case people don't need this crap, or are your policies bad, in which case you shouldn't have been elected in the first place? So, long story short, the bloc leader is a complete hypocrite. Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, all these leftists are as well. If oil is bad, then stop buying it. Stop buying oil from the Middle East. See what happens. That would be pretty hilarious to watch them collapse. If you're going to buy oil, not buying it from Alberta is an absolute disgrace. And you can't argue with that even if you disagree with my position on climate change. So I'm going to leave it there. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.